Hey everyone, I'm Ben. Welcome to my channel where we embark on a journey towards true wealth. Today we'll be discussing something that has saved my neck many times, an emergency fund. Now would be a great time to go ahead and hit that like button and subscribe if you find tips and tricks for your personal finances to be useful. And make sure you stick around until the end of the video because I'll be discussing a non-traditional way to think about an emergency fund. But without further ado, let's go ahead and get started with the video.
Perfect.
So a basic definition for an emergency fund is money that you set aside for a rainy day. And kind of the general rule of thumb for that is 3 to 12 months worth of expenses. So your monthly expenses, what you spend in a month, saved up in a savings account, something that you can have access to right away, like cash. And what this number is for you, whether it's 3 months or 12 months or somewhere in between worth of expenses, depends a lot on your personal situation. So let's take at one end of the spectrum, we have someone who's single, they have a steady income job, and they have quite a bit of flexibility in their life. They might only need 3 months worth of expenses as an emergency fund because if something happens, they have a lot of flexibility, they don't have people depending on them for the income, and so they can kind of move and shift things around a little easier. Now on the other end of the spectrum, let's say we have someone who has 3 children, young children that are depending on them. They have a commission-based job, so the income is kind of in and out, here and there, not as steady. That's the type of person that might want to have 12 months worth of emergency fund savings. That way they could cover a larger emergency if they were having income problems and also had something unexpected happen on the side. Another factor that goes into how much you should have in your emergency fund is your own personal comfort level. So that person, that single person with a steady income job, they might not feel completely comfortable with only 3 months worth of savings for their expenses. So they might want to save up to 6 months or 12 months, whatever that is. It also depends on your comfort level. I would not recommend, however, going beneath 3 months worth of emergency fund savings. That's kind of the bare minimum number that I would recommend. Saving for an emergency fund is probably one of the most boring things that you can do in personal finance, but it is critical. It's kind of like paying car insurance. Nobody likes paying car insurance. It's not a fun thing to do, but when you need it, you really need it. If you get in an accident and you don't have car insurance, all of a sudden that can be a very serious situation. And so I wanted to illustrate this point with a little story. So in this story, we have Patricia and Emily, and both are bright young ladies that graduated from college and got shiny new jobs at glamazon.com. And they're both enjoying their work and enjoying not having to live on a student budget anymore. And Patricia, she goes out, she finances a new car, she gets a whole new wardrobe, she's having fun with her friends on the weekends, eating, just really living the life and enjoying this new lifestyle. Emily is doing a lot of the same things. She upgraded her wardrobe, she didn't get a brand new car, but she upgraded the vehicle that she had. She enjoys eating out and not living on a college budget anymore. But Emily makes sure every month that she's setting aside money to save for a rainy day, for her emergency fund. Now, 6 months down the road of working at glamazon.com, both women unfortunately get flat tires on the freeway, cause minor accidents, and incur $1,500 worth of damage to both of their cars. Now, Patricia has no money set aside and doesn't know how she's going to cover that expense, and so she puts it on her credit card. Now her credit card is maxed out, she is stressed, she's losing sleep over it at night, it's charging her a lot of interest on this card, and she has to make some serious cutbacks to even think about paying off this bill, which is a very stressful situation for her. And more than anything, she's worried if something else were to happen. What's going to happen if I get another flat tire in the next few months before I can pay this off? My credit card's already maxed out. And so she is in a very bad place. Emily, on the other hand, it is a stressful situation. She doesn't like the money that she has to spend, but because she's been building her emergency fund, she's able to draw from that savings account and just pay off the bill in cash and move on with her life and continue to replenish that fund and build it up for a potential another rainy day. And so even though it was stressful in the moment, Emily just moves on and it's okay. So that can be the difference between having an emergency fund and not. It's like insurance for bad things that happen to you in life. Let's talk about getting started. Some of you may feel that 3 to 12 months worth of expenses saved in a bank account is a lot of money, and it is, but just start small. So maybe you start with 5% or 10% of your monthly income and you save that every month toward your emergency fund and watch it build over time. I'm gonna link below my video to automated savings, which I think is a great way to build up your emergency fund, and just a really easy, frictionless way to get that started. I recommend having your emergency savings fund just in a separate savings account at your bank. You can open a new account, talk to a teller, it's fairly easy to do, and just know that the funds in there are only for emergencies. They're not for when you need a new pair of shoes or something like that. It's for true emergencies when you can't cover it by other means. Make sure to stick around for the next part of my video where I'll be discussing kind of a more advanced way of thinking about emergency fund savings that are for those who are further along in their personal finance journey. Now, a non-traditional way to do your emergency fund is something that is used often by more aggressive investors in the stock market or their businesses. So we talked about having cash on the sidelines in your savings account to use for emergencies. Well, for this technique, instead of having cash, you get a low interest line of credit, something like a home equity line of credit, and have that be your emergency fund savings. That sounds kind of counterintuitive, using debt, that line of credit, borrowing as an emergency fund. But kind of some of the logic behind it, the thinking, if you just stash money into a savings account, it's gonna earn pitiful returns, 1% or less a year. But if you put that money into the stock market, it's gonna earn you a greater return. Stocks historically over a long period of time can return between 8 to 10%. So that's much higher than you would get in a savings account. But you don't have access to those funds right away. They're a lot more up and down, not as easy to get access to as just cash in a savings account. But the thought is, if a true emergency arises, then I'll just put it on my home equity line of credit that has very low interest, and I'll pay it off in the next few months, because what I'm giving up by not putting that money in the stock market outweighs the small amount of interest that I'll have to pay in the event of an emergency. Like I said, this is a more advanced way of thinking about an emergency fund. I would not recommend this strategy for anyone that has any sort of debt or is just starting out with their personal finances. Kind of the ideal candidate for this type of emergency fund is someone who's established, who's familiar with their personal finances, who has a large chunk of savings in retirement or other ways already, and who's saving a large amount of their income, 10 to 20% each month, and they're used to that, and so they could redirect that money, that 10 to 20%, to paying off their line of credit if they had an emergency arise. All right, everyone, that brings us to the end of the video. I hope you found value in emergency savings and talking about emergency savings. If you did, please hit that like button and subscribe to my channel for more useful tips on personal finance. I would also love to connect with you guys. I started an Instagram page and a Twitter to better connect with my audience, so check out those links below and leave your comments of how an emergency fund has saved your neck in the past. Thank you, and I'll see you next time.